Renee Hobbs writes, in Copyright Clarity, media literacy education vitally depends on the ability of educators to be able to use and manipulate copyrighted materials from digital media, mass media, and popular culture. The question is, how can we do this legally? How can our students do this legally? Again, Hobbs writes, mass and digital media are an important part of the cultural environment. With the prevalence of social media and the inundation of digital media in every aspect of our students' lives, media has a large influence in shaping their identity. It is important that we, as educators, take advantage of the media to explain our ideas when instructing students. Hobbs states, the effective use of copyrighted materials enhances the teaching and learning experience. Using a wider variety and more up-to-date materials than may be available from textbooks allows teachers more opportunities to hold students' interest. Additionally, when students can pull from a broader source of materials, they will have more success at expressing their ideas. What is copyright? The Constitution allows for copyright thusly. The government can establish a copyright system to promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries, from Section 1, Article 8 of the U.S. Constitution, 1787. Copyright was originally included in the Constitution to encourage the spread of ideas and information to benefit not just the originators and creators, but to benefit society. It protects authors and inventors to encourage innovation and creation, but the fair use doctrine encourages the dissemination of ideas through criticism, reporting, and education. What is copyrighted? You do not need to apply for copyright as you do for trademarks or patents. Ideas, images, and music are covered under copyright as soon as they are published. No copyright symbol needed. And with the internet, you do not need a publisher to produce your work. It can be published as soon as it is placed online. When a work is in the public domain, that means it is free to use in any way. Generally, works published before 1923 are in the public domain, unless they have been granted an extension. Also, the law used to require the copyright mark. If a work was published after 1922, but before 1989 and has no copyright symbol, then it is in public domain. Now, no copyright symbol is required for something that is considered to be copyrighted. The Fair Use Doctrine of Copyright Law of 1976 defines fair use as including, quote, reproduction in copies for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, including multiple copies for classroom use, scholarship, or research, end quote. Hobbs points out that the four main factors, the purpose of use, the nature of copyrighted work, the amount used, and the market impact, cannot be used as a checklist or in isolation. They need to be considered as part of a whole and not as the only consideration. As students and educators, we are aware of the importance of attribution and sourcing our information. We are also very familiar with the concept of plagiarism. Sometimes the concept of copyright can be confused with these concepts. While it is important to source, simply applying a citation does not cover you from copyright infringement. These are two separate concepts. Additionally, even if you plagiarize Sherlock Holmes, you will not be guilty of copyright infringement because it is in the public domain. Hobbs writes, transformativeness is the term emerging for the repurposing of copyrighted materials as part of the creative process. When the original work is transformed for a new purpose, this is fair use. This concept opens many avenues of use for digital media that educators may have previously believed off limits. To determine transformativeness, educators should ask themselves two questions. One, is the material being used for a different purpose than originally intended, or is it just repeating the same intent and value as the original? Two, was the amount of material used appropriate considering the original work? The Hope poster used during the 2008 Obama campaign called into question fair use when it was discovered that the creator of the poster, Shepard Fairey, used an AP photograph taken by Manny Garcia. The case was eventually settled out of court. The Hope poster also inspired many parodies. Parodies are generally covered under fair use. Working with educators from around the country, Hobbs developed a code of best practices. For example, it states, educators can make copies of newspaper articles, TV shows, and other copyrighted works and use them and keep them for educational use. It also says, learners can use copyrighted works in creating new materials and distribute their works digitally if they meet the transformativeness standard. Checklist charts about what you can and cannot do with copyright law are often provided to educators. It is important to view the source of these documents. Publishing, movie, and record industries have vested interest in wanting the public to pay for the right to use their material. When educators and students, as well as the public in general, better understand fair use, they will be less likely to pay for rights unnecessarily. According to Hobbes, often the charts and graphs are far more limiting than the actual law. They will also reference negotiated agreements. These agreements were negotiated with the interests of the creative industries at the forefront and not those of the educators. They will reference things like, quote, the rule that you can only use 10% of copyrighted music or a maximum of 30 seconds of music, end quote, that do not actually exist in copyright law. These charts masquerade as law, but they are not. There are many different ways to introduce copyright law and fair use to our students. One would be a lesson exploring appropriation art. The Museum of Modern Art defines appropriation as the intentional borrowing, copying, and alteration of pre-existing images and objects. Appropriation art was popular with the pop art movement with artists like Andy Warhol, Tom Wesselman, and Roy Lichtenstein. Another possible lesson would be one where students find examples where the original work was not transformed following the concept of fair use, and alternative examples where it was. There are many examples on the internet of transformativeness and many examples of copyright infringement. Students would then explain to the class why or why not the original work was transformed. Incorporating an understanding of copyright law and fair use into everyday learning from elementary school through high school is an important part of teaching students digital citizenship. This is not something learned in a day or in one lesson. It is a practice that, if taught from the beginning, along with research skills and internet safety, will become second nature to our students. Taking advantage of copyright law to disseminate ideas and information is not just a right, but a responsibility. With all the information and images available in the digital age, it is our responsibility as educators to arm our students with the knowledge needed to take advantage of this powerful tool.